All right, we are live. Hi,
Hey.
everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Page. And today is Happy International Women's Day, which is why we're doing this on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. So, Stephanie, Happy International Women's Day.
Hi, happy International Women's Day to you too. I am looking to see if we're live on LinkedIn. I don't see it yet, but that doesn't mean anything. What do you see on your side?
I don't see anything either, but let's see, live today. Let's see what it says. I don't know. I can never find anything on LinkedIn. Oh, it says I'm live right now. A little pop-up came up. So
Perfect.
there we
We
go.
are.
Oh, there we are.
Yay.
Fantastic. Hopefully I
Yay.
don't crash
Yep.
anything.
We're doing good. It's so good to see you. I was thinking about International Women's Day, who I'd love to spend time chatting with. And it was you. I thought it would be great for us to talk.
This is the best, right? I love it. And we decided to disrupt our planned schedule to come on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, just so we can celebrate this. And I think it's a great thing to talk about. So
it is.
In case you guys don't know, because we've only done this once before, but we want to talk to you about what Beyond the Page is. And I'm Jennifer Crosswhite of Tandem Services. I bring people to the page with my editing and book coaching work. And Stephanie, tell them what you do.
Hey guys, I'm Stephanie Feger, and I'm on the other side of the book. When the book is ready to be published and it's published, then I help bring it to the market. And Jennifer, I feel the need today for those who listened last week. And it was all nice and quiet on my neck of the woods. If it's loud this time, this is what you do. This is what we do as women entrepreneurs. Where you are is where we work. And I happen to be in the hills of Tennessee in Gatlinburg at one of my favorite places, Starbucks.
Yeah.
Drinking my chai tea. What are you doing today?
I've got my J mug, which is funny because when I pick it up, I can see the J on my side, but there's no J on this side, which seems weird. And I've got regular old Earl Grey today. So
I have to ask, are you left-handed?
I'm not.
Okay, so I am, and every mug I pick up, it always looks at me and not the other way around.
So if I did this, so maybe this is a left-handed mug?
Maybe it is.
It could be.
Literally, what was talking about this yesterday. I was at a Christmas store down here, and I almost bought a mug. It had the Grinch on it, and it said the resting Grinch face. Resting Grinch face.
I love it. I love it. That's fantastic. Yeah, I think I maybe was supposed to be left-handed because I distinctly remember in kindergarten picking up like crayons or scissors out of a jar with my left hand and then putting them in my right hand.
Really?
And I can do many, many things with my left hand. I'm fairly ambidextrous. And I actually can write with my left hand. It just looks like a third grader. So
well, hey, I mean, how many people can write better than third graders?
Well, and the funny thing is, I have broken my right thumb so many times. I use the space key on the keyboard with my left thumb. I can curl my hair with my left hand. I can do a number of things.
And now you have me practicing to see what I do with my spacer.
I think we're trained normally to do it with your right thumb. So anyways, and for those of you who learn to type on a typewriter, it is only one space after periods now instead of two. Those of you who learned, because we did learn back in the day, and I see this in manuscripts quite often, and you can kind of go, oh, you must have learned to type on a typewriter. You must be my age.
Well, so I didn't realize. So the double space began with the typewriter?
Yes, because a typewriter is monospaced. So if you think about those little keys that hit, they're on a piece of metal, and they're all, the metal piece does not shift, right? So if you have a wide next to a skinny, you're still going to have some extra space there. But a computer is smart enough to kind of close in that space, and so you really don't need that extra space on a computer to show. If you were to just put one space after a typewriter period, depending on what letter came next, it might look like it's run together. So.
And here, so I come from the generation where I was taught double spacing, but then I went into media, PR, all of that, and we went. I don't care what AP said, we went to single space because in the journalism field, every space is money. So
Yes,
I've learned, yes, for a lot at a young age in my career, the importance of the single space, and that's fun.
Yeah.
Who would have known
So
today that that's a
interesting.
tip?
And it's funny how technology changes things. I mean, ultimately, the message is the message, and that is what we want to get out, and that's the most important part. But the technology definitely changes how we get that across. I mean, look at how many in the past 2 years people are doing things like video conferences and the lives and Zoom meetings and all those kinds of things that didn't used to happen before. And what you do, what I do, back in the day, we would have to only work with people local to us or people that we could meet in person. And I don't have hardly any in-person clients. Almost all my clients are, I have clients in Spain, actually.
Yes.
So you can have people all around the world, which is fantastic. I love that we have that. I think that's just a wonderful, great advantage of technology, and so it allows us to continue. And especially as women, we'll talk specifically about women today being International Women's Day. We usually wear a lot of hats, right? You're a mom, I'm a mom. We have house responsibilities, kid responsibilities, and we're entrepreneurs. So we're trying to fit all those hats together. I mean, that's why you're in Starbucks today, because you're doing fun stuff with your family.
Yeah.
And the technology allows us to put our goals and dreams and the talents that we have to use in those spaces of life where we don't have to go and sit in an office from 8 to 5 every day. And I think that's just a wonderful, wonderful thing that we get to do. So
I do too. And I love how you just mentioned with the technology, I look at that and really over the last couple of years, Jennifer, how it's changed, how we just do business. But like you, a lot of the people I get to work with are all over the world. And a lot of people who are on my team are in different parts of the world too. I mean, I've got a really great friend that works on our team. And she is out of London, but from South Africa. And, and publishers I work with in Mexico and people I've talked to in Australia and everywhere, right? It's fun like that. But what I love about that, I think really aligns with International Women's Day, is the power of what a story and a voice can do. I have found, me and my little country girl over here in Kentucky, if anytime I get the chance to talk to people outside of where I'm from, or any stories I get to consume outside of from where I'm from, it enriches me. It makes me more well-rounded. It makes me better understand people and all of this beautiful stuff. And I feel that way when I talk to people in other countries. And I feel that way when I talk to all different forms of diversity, including women voices and beyond. And so I think that, books have such power to do that. And we're just lucky we get to be in an industry where we get to work with the people who write the books.
Yes, it's the best, right? I just love being able to help people get their stories out to a wider world. And in your experience, what are some of the reasons women are hesitant to share their stories?
Oh gosh. Well, I'll use me for an example. There are parts of some of our stories that it wasn't but a couple of years ago that I ever felt confident enough to share my story. I had in my book, there's a chapter in my book about a sexual harassment experience that I dealt with when I was 16. We did pull in the local police. They sided with the other person, not me, when I was 16. A different world back then. Me Too movement was not around, and I was forced to be quiet. So I remember when I wrote that chapter in my book, like shaking, because I'm like, all of these feelings from as a young girl that I was told, even though I know today is different, I remember my experiences through the lens of that 16-year-old who's not able to rationalize like I am now. And so when I shared that story, there were other women in my community who knew the person that did it to me because he had done it to them. And they were like, oh, you're going to talk about it? And I'm like, yes, I'm talking about it. Well, if I can help somebody, I'll do it. But I think it helped uncover to me that as women, over the years, whether we remember it or not, we've been told certain things, different things, and breaking through what we've been told to do what we're called to do is hard, and it is vulnerable, and it, I don't know about you, but when I share, I almost feel like it becomes a reflection of my family, more of a reflection than just of me. And so I feel like as women, all of those other hats you were talking about, like they never leave. They're always connected, and our stories have alignment with those. And we just have to realize that our stories are important and need to be told no matter what hat we're wearing.
Yes. And it's so true. Like we as women are told, don't rock the boat. We don't want to make people uncomfortable, or we don't think we have an experience that's important enough or that would really matter. But I think your story really illustrates that when we take that step to share our story, other people draw strength from that. They feel like their experience matters. It's amazing. You don't have to actually have your story go too far before it starts impacting people. You don't have to necessarily have a big platform. You don't have to be famous. You don't have to have all these things people often think they do. Your story can be super powerful just really for your world, the people that are in your world, and you'll never know how far those ripples are going to go out. And
no, you don't.
People don't understand there is real power in writing your story, just real power.
There is.
What were some of the things that helped you get over that when you decided to write your story?
So that particular chapter, well, I'll just hinge on that for a little bit. That particular chapter, I remember when it happened in my life, and I remember when I decided what good could come out of this horrible situation. And all I ever wanted to do was talk to the other sisters of mine in my high school. So I went to an all-girls high school where we were, they say, they cultivate us from girls to women. I remember, you know, that whole journey of being prepared to like go out and like take over the world. Like it was amazing, the type of warrior women we were created out of that school. And my sophomore year, when this situation happened, I remember telling my parents, I just want to get in front of the student body and share my story because I want to help one of my other sisters. Like I want to help these women. And the police said, never, you cannot do this. You do anything and you will be in trouble. So I didn't share anything. But do you know, when my book came out in 2018, I remember that and it had been 20 years then, like since I had that situation happen. I remember thinking, I want to go back and talk. And I connected back with my school, and they did have me come back last year and the year before. I think it was right before COVID. Then I came back and I spoke to multiple classes of girls at the same age that I was. I shared my story, and to a couple classes, one of the students came up to me and was very open about a situation she was dealing with that she hadn't told anybody. And that is why we share our stories. That is why our voice matters. Seeing someone be vulnerable can empower somebody else to not deal with something that they don't have to stand up for what they believe in, to speak their truth. And it doesn't even have to be so heavy as the situation I'm talking about. Every story matters. Every perspective matters. And when we share, and that's what I love about the power of books, when we share, when we write, when we publish, when we promote, when we put our story out there, we don't know whoever it will touch, but that's the beauty of becoming an author. Our journey is almost like the hidden successes, the things we'll never know, but we do it anyway. Stories matter. Our stories matter. And I know from in proof that is, maybe that changes lives. It changes lives.
You never know. You never know the impact. And that's the wonderful thing about a book, whereas if you have like a speaking thing where you go around and you speak, you know, a lot of people are terrified of speaking, and you are limited by either the audiences you can get in front of, or nowadays, of course, we've got technology. But I tell people, you know, a book can go around the world and touch people you will never meet. You never know who is going to hand your book out to somebody, you know, to somebody else, or somebody's going to pick it up somewhere and read through it, and something you say is just going to touch them. Whether it's just, like you said, it doesn't have to be a heavy negative experience. It could be positive experiences. It can be how you handle the situation, lessons that you learned in life, your reflections on life. There are many, many ways that we as humans connect with each other. And story is like the most powerful way. That's why we always have stories and storytellers as part of our culture. And so for so many years, women have really had a difficult time, in many cases, getting their voices heard. And so one of the things I love about technology now is that really anybody's story can get out there and be told. And I think that is super, super fun and super encouraging. And so I tell people it can be scary, right? It can be scary to put your story out there. Many people don't know where to begin. And so one of the things I like to encourage people is to get into community. If you can get into a community of writers, I have one through my group, people from all over the world that join together. But I have been part of local groups and all different online groups and all different kinds of groups. And community is super, super powerful in helping you share your story with a group of trusted people who are trying to do the same thing you're doing, and being able to do that and get some courage and get some feedback. And then you have this little safe group, and then you can kind of take it out to the world. And I think community is one of those really, really powerful things for beginning to share your story.
It is. And I don't know about you. It's a little unique in my household because my husband so I've not read the book Drop the Ball, but I think I've talked to you about it. In times when you can't do it all, you have the things you don't do and other people pick up. So my husband does some of the duties that like my mom or that I did when they were younger, my kids were younger. But you're talking about the power of story. And if you go back, you think about tucking your kids in at night, usually it's the mom who's telling a story, right? Stories are integrated in our life, and women from a young age, and men too, don't get me wrong, but I mean, for many families, it's women at a young age are shaping the stories in our minds, from little bitty guys. And I think that I don't want women to stop doing that. Like, your story matters. Your story matters as you're shaping the next generation. And your story matters on how you can shape the generation and the world today, especially in a broken world that we're dealing with right now. We need empathy. We need compassion. We need connection. And I think a lot of those are beautiful traits that women have inherently. And the more we can share those stories, I think the more hope we can create, the more we can believe that we can be a part of bigger change. And I just love reading. I love supporting authors, but I always love when I get the chance to read a beautiful story that a female author has written, because I know that it is layered with those elements of compassion that we have and that the world needs.
Yes, I agree 100%. And we do, as women, approach the world through a different lens. We have different ways we look at things and handle things, and I love that's a perspective we bring to the world that for many years was really not given importance and was not highlighted. And for a lot of times, the traditional publishing model was really geared towards men, towards people with power, towards people with a platform. And so now we've got the ability to have that go out and share with everybody, and I think that is so powerful. And I can't encourage people enough to begin to share their stories. One of the things I tell people is, your story doesn't have to be for the whole world necessarily. It can be something that you put together for your family. So you have shared history and shared memories to pass down from generation to generation. My grandmother just died recently. She was 99. And
oh my gosh.
We think of how many changes she's lived through. You think of all the technology, right? And all the stories and all these wonderful things. In our family, we were sitting around, we'd had a wonderful celebration for her just a few weeks before she passed. And then even after at her funeral. And I was sitting there thinking, we are a family of storytellers, because when we get together, we share stories. And we share stories about when my dad was little and things that they did. And, things that my grandma, she would tell me. I got to stay with her. One time she'd broken her hip about 8 years ago, and she was staying with my parents for a few months, and I stayed with them for about a week. And I just got to sit with her and listen to stories. And we pulled up Google Earth, and we found the house that she used to live in San Diego. And the house wasn't there anymore, but she recognized the big tree in the front yard that she had used to climb. And so
oh my God.
And all these little things that were just sort of prompts, and she would tell me these stories, and there were things came out that my dad didn't even know. And it was just a wonderful time of recording those stories for our family. And I think those are the things that, now she's gone, so we can't ask her any more questions about those stories. And you think about that as every generation passes on, what are we missing? What are we losing? Even if it's the traditional family recipes or those traditional, where does this tradition come from in our family? Why do we do things this way? How did our grandparents meet? What is their love story? All those wonderful things that maybe don't mean a whole lot to the whole world, but they're precious to our families. And again, with technology, we can put those things together and share those stories and be those memory keepers for our family to share from generations to generations. So they have that sense of heritage, but also some of those funny lessons that they learn. There's just
I love it.
stories and lessons that come from that. And I think as women, we have that unique ability because of our desire to be relational, that we can pass those things on. So I love to tell people to do that.
I love that. And it reminds me of something that my family's doing right now, but something anybody that's listening could implement today. There is a company called Storyworth. Are you familiar with this?
No,
Okay, it actually is, it is something you and I should probably look into. It's pretty cool. They send you a writing prompt once a week. You email them back the answer to that writing prompt. And at the end of the year, they bind all your writing prompts into a little book. And it's cool. It's meant to help with generational knowledge, like what you're sharing. So my dad is doing it right now for my kids. My husband's also doing it mainly because he's like, well, mom wrote a book, might as well dad write a book, right?
Yes.
But I think anyone listening could take that concept and run with it. You could very easily have family or friends or your children ask you a series, like come up with a series of 52 questions. And each week you just journal on it. And then just like you mentioned, there's so many publishing platforms. When we say publish it doesn't have to go out to the world. It can be published for your family to have. And then that becomes like a little legacy that you've created and that you pass down. When I wrote my book, I remember telling my husband, if nobody else picks it up, and I have 500 copies in the basement and my kids read it, that's all I care about, because there's so much truth within my memoir about what I want them to remember and how they can see the world. So I think that when I think about how to help authors market their books, I always go back to their why, because if their why is to create that legacy, to make that impact, that to me is almost different than building a whole business around your book's message, right? Like there's different reasons and none are right or wrong. All of our stories matter, no matter at what point we take them and run with them. But I love that idea of what you just said. You know what, Jen? We should do a writing prompt experience for people.
We should. I love it.
That should be. We should do it.
Yes. And, I'm sure there are ones online, because I know my kids had, I don't know what grade it is, but they're assigned to interview a relative. And my son interviewed his grandmother, who's Japanese, and did this whole display about her life and where she'd come from and all these kinds of things. And that was part of it, he was supposed to ask her some questions. But even for people who feel really uncomfortable with the writing process, I mean, you can dictate, you can record, right? We all have these video cameras on our phones that are with us all the time, which is amazing. And so we have this ability to really record things that matter. I mean, I love cats. You love cats. There are a million cat videos out there, right? So if we can have a million cat videos, I think we can have some family videos. They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be scripted. They don't have to be fancy or any of these kinds of things. Because one thing I noticed when I was going through my grandmother's photos, when I put together the slideshow for the memorial service, was that she was the family photographer. And this happens with a lot of women, right? We take the pictures and we're not in the pictures. And so there's years where there's no pictures of her. And I think that was a lesson I learned, was like, let's stop waiting for it to be the perfect hair, the perfect makeup, let me lose 5 pounds, whatever, before you take my picture. Because your family is not going to care about that. They want to see you. They want the memories of you. They don't want it to be perfect. It's the memories. And I think the same thing applies to the writing. Don't wait for it to be perfect. Don't wait to have the right whatever. Just do it. Just get those memories down, because your story is so important. I was talking to a guy yesterday at a networking thing, and he had gone to a memorial service, and one of the things that they did was they passed out paper and they asked people to write stories of the person that was at whose memorial service it was, and he froze. He said, I couldn't remember, like, you know, and that's very true, right? Some people, he said, driving home, I had a million ideas, but in the moment, I just couldn't think, and that's what happens. I said, oh, writer's block. Writer's block happens when there's too much pressure in the moment. And so if you put too much pressure on yourself to do it perfectly, or to get it just right, or to craft the perfect memoir or whatever, you're never going to do it because it's going to be overwhelming. And it's so much better to just jot down notes or bullet points, whatever it is, to get it done so people can have that wonderful memory. So I love this. I think we should do something with this.
I do. We have to. I know. And the other, you just said something that also triggered something for me. When my husband's grandmother passed away, all these people got up and spoke beautifully of his grandmother, you know, at the funeral service. And I remember thinking, man, I think that grandma would really have loved to hear this, you know, without you know, and she wasn't there in person to hear it. And I went home that night and I told my husband, I said, I got a new idea for Christmas. Myself and all my cousins, I'm going to reach out to them and I'm going to have each of them do a handwritten note.
I love it.
I think some of it turned into type, but it doesn't matter. A note to my grandmother and my grandfather, and I'm going to put together a book. We have always loved books. And and we're going to put photos and all that stuff. So I did it, and we did it that year. I pulled it off in like a month. And I'm so glad that we did, because that was one of the last years before my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia and her health has declined. She read that book almost every single day, and I wanted her to know how much we loved her, and my grandfather, of course, too. But really, my grandmother is the cornerstone of that family. I wanted her to hear all of that stuff and see all that stuff. And to this day, she still looks through it. She doesn't understand it, but she still looks through it. So that is also proof of the power of, like, leaving a legacy or creating a legacy, but also making sure people know how you feel about them. And I think stories do that. It allows you this opportunity. Don't wait, because you don't know when you might not have that opportunity.
Yes. And it's so much more powerful. It's one thing to say I love you to someone, which is an amazing thing, but to say I love it when we bake cookies together. It means so much that you spend that time with me. And then we talked about whatever, right? I mean, that specific image is what stays with people. So that's fantastic. I love it. We've got some great ideas that we came up with today. I love it.
I know. Y'all listening, be looking. We'll post information. I'm sure that the two of us will come together and come up with some great ideas of what we're going to do and offer.
That's right. Well, as we're beginning to wrap things up, we like to share a favorite book with people and something from it. So my pick for this week, I think you've read it too, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm covering up his name, but there you go.
Love it.
This book, I keep it on my desk, and I subscribe to his newsletter, and he once a week he sends, it's a 3-2-1 newsletter.
It's a great newsletter.
Great little quick bite. And then if you follow him on social media, he always has these really great bites. But he says something here, and I say this to my writers all the time. He says, it's one thing to say I'm the type of person who wants this, a certain thing, a habit, a goal, whatever, right? It's something very different to say I'm the type of person who is this. And so one of the things I encourage my writers to do is to begin to identify as a writer. Instead of saying I'm trying to write a book, or I'm trying to write, or I'd like to write, start saying I am a writer. Because once you change your identity to that, well, what does a writer do? A writer writes. So you will align your identity with how you are with your behavior. I love this subtitle, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. And if you've ever tried, I'm a productivity geek. I love productivity. I love organization. And so if you have ever tried systems that are made for people like me, and you're not one of those people, you will often feel frustrated and resentful and like a failure. But his book really does show you the power of really, really small changes to make big impact in your life. So
I love that book.
That's my
and that is
recommendation.
I love it. And it's one I actually recommend you should read every year annually. Like,
Yes.
there's a couple of them at the beginning of the new year, you pull it out, because I think as we evolve as writers and authors and authorpreneurs, and just as humans in general, we come to everything with a different perspective and a different place
Yes.
of our life. That book, I think, will grow with you. Love that book. Love
Yes.
what you said. And I love how he talks really about just small incremental movements. They compound. You do 1% better every day. Imagine,
Yes.
that doesn't mean at the end of the year you're 350%, 350%, 350, it's 352 days.
60.
352.
65.
Whatever. I'm a writer. I am not a math girl. Okay, but whatever. At the end of the year, you're not that much percentage. It's compound. You're bigger, you're better, you've done more, you've extended your reach. And I just love how he shares that. Oh, I love that you have that book, that you shared that book today. It's wonderful.
Love it. I love it. Well, tune in next week on Wednesday, our regular time, same time, but on Wednesday. And next week, we're going to start talking about when should you start promoting your book? Is it ever too early to begin promoting your book? We're going to talk about that. So authors, your words have power. Your book has power and your message has power. Hopefully we've conveyed that to you today. And we're inviting you to take that message beyond the page. So cheers, Stephanie.
Cheers.
And to all of our author people out there. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.